Morning, Massachusetts. Yes? Excellent. My name is Maria Garnett. I live in Richmond, Virginia, although I am a Texas native. I am a public policy professional. I recently left a job doing nonpartisan policy analysis and analyzing the performance of government programs for the Virginia General Assembly. So that is a career and it's very cool. And I'm trying to make sure more people know about it. And now I am a policy advisor for the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services. This is my third year of involvement with We the People.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dan Wong. I'm a retired attorney and former judge. I'm also on the board of directors for the Center for Civic Education. And from the white hairs, you can tell I've been involved with the Center for Civic Education for a long time. It didn't cause the white hairs, but I'm just saying that I'm old. I live in Boise, Idaho. I'm very happy to see you and be here.
Great, so please introduce yourselves and your teacher.
Hi, my name is Abel DeBerry and I'm a junior at Easthampton High School.
Good morning, my name is Madeline Moynihan and I'm a senior at Easthampton High School.
Hello, my name is Nora DeDerwitter. I'm a senior at Easthampton High School. This is our wonderful teacher, Miss Kelly Brown, and we are representing Massachusetts.
Great, thank you all. I am now going to dive right in and read your question. Thomas Hobbes noted that life in a state of nature is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. How has the human condition changed over time? And how is that change reflected in our expectations of government? Should the principles of natural rights or classical republicanism guide policy changes designed to improve the condition of all people? And what are the most pressing domestic and global challenges facing Americans today and in the future? What policies can you suggest to address them? You may begin.
The human condition encompasses the entirety of the human experience, including our relationship with our government and society. Throughout history, the human condition has become more interdependent, and so has our expectation of our government. In the Leviathan, Hobbes defines the state of nature as solitary, with every man in all-out war with each other. While one could agree this solitary life could never exist, it sets a grim starting point to consider. Starting from ancient Greece and Rome and focusing on Western culture, we can see the human condition both improve and decline due to war, disease, and ultimately the actions of governments. Humans are social. For their safety and happiness, they form governments. Those governments then heavily influence the progress of the society and the pursuit of happiness. There's often a tension between individuals and their government, and out of this tension, new opportunities are born.
For example, the human condition was significantly improved by the Protestant Reformation, the Enlightenment, and the growth of capitalism. Revolutionary ideas of literacy, democracy, and social mobility crossed Europe with the printing press and significantly changed humans' expectations of government. People stopped seeing themselves as subjects without free will and began seeking God and happiness in new ways. The American Revolution and Constitution created new expectations for government, establishing consent of the governed. The people now expected the government to allow for the pursuit of happiness by protecting rights and providing security. Today, society has advanced to provide us with comfortable lives through technology and social programs, allowing us to live longer and easier lives, although this may not equate to human happiness.
Looking to both ancient and modern models of happiness, we see that rights and security are essential. In Aristotle's classical republican theory of eudaimonia, he argued that happiness could be attained through a virtuous life without impediment, indicating a class-based view of contentment. Today, the United Nations Happiness Index includes social support, healthy life expectancy, and freedom of choice. Both systems find societal happiness by combining ideas of natural rights and the common good. Therefore, human condition can be most improved by combining classical republicanism and natural rights.
At times, expanding rights and providing security improve the human condition. Currently, the Black Lives Matter movement shows that when people do not feel included and protected by the social contract, they will reject it and resist with the hope that the tension will bring more security and rights. There are also times when security must be prioritized. Currently, the COVID-19 pandemic has led to limits on individual rights for the common good through mask mandates and social distancing.
Voting rights, police reform, and America's global impact are pressing issues. According to Robert Dawes' self-determination theory, you are the best person to represent yourself. Therefore, individuals are best to advocate for their own condition. Policy should aim to extend democracy to improve the human condition. Despite this, the United States has widespread voter restrictions. Congress should propose an amendment making voting a fundamental right to ensure that all people subject to US law have a voice in their own condition. It's also important to recognize that the human condition is not universal. It varies based on class, race, and sexual orientation.
Recently, the Black Lives Matter movement has brought light to police brutality and systemic racism in our criminal justice system. Ending mandatory minimums, abolishing the death penalty, and legalizing marijuana will help to improve the conditions of minority groups that has been repeatedly ignored. Lastly, policy that impacts the human condition does not stop at the borders of any nation. Looking back on the improvements in the human condition, we can also see that improvements of some can mean destruction of others, such as the transatlantic slave trade. And as seen today in the policies of globalization that has brought wealth to the Western world while creating poverty in others. This is why climate, industry regulation, and trade policy need to be more responsive to impacts. Can I finish, please? Impact, not just Americans, but the world. Thank you. Ready for your questions.
Great. Thank you all so much. You make an argument that the best approach here is to combine national rights and classical republicanism. And I would really like for you to share some examples of how that combined approach, in your opinion, is reflected in the US Constitution itself, whether the original articles of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, or later amendments.
We see this combination of classical republicanism and natural rights a lot in the Constitution, especially through the Second Amendment and gun rights. McDonald v. Chicago incorporated the Second Amendment into states, making it a stronger amendment, while Presser v. Illinois says that states can make regulations on guns, which the incorporation of the Second Amendment was natural rights for people, and the regulations on these gun rights would be more towards classical republicanism. And we find a balance between these two things so people can both have their right to own a gun while also protecting communities and individuals themselves through classical republicanism.
And another way that we incorporate classical republicanism in our Constitution is the fact that we have a representative government that we're able to elect officials in office in order to represent ourselves and our beliefs.
So if I heard correctly in your 4-minute testimony, you said one of the issues, domestic challenges that we're facing is voting rights. And you mentioned, I believe, that the federal government should be involved in that. However, recently, hasn't there been quite a few state legislatures that have been affecting voting rights? And so my question is, number one, who does have the ultimate responsibility, federal government or states' rights? And what, if anything, can the federal government do to affect what the state governments are doing? Please explain.
Absolutely. So ultimately, the federal government does have a bigger responsibility to protect voting rights. And while states do have state sovereignty, so they can make their own, in Article 1, Section 4, states have the rights to control their own elections. However, Congress does have the ability to create amendments that would make voting a fundamental right, which would outlaw all of the voting restrictions that states individually place on their own people. So ultimately, Congress does have the ability to create laws and amendments that would overlook state regulations themselves.
On the subject of voting as well, I think I heard you say at one point that all people subject to laws should have a voice in those laws. Does that mean that only people who are US citizens should be allowed to vote, or should residents of the country, because they're subject to the laws, be allowed to vote? And what defends your position either way?
I think that anyone, including permanent residents, should be able to vote because they're affected by the laws. From personal experience, my grandfather from Ecuador, he's a permanent resident and he's been living here for the majority of his life. And he should have the right to vote because even if he's not originally from here, he's subject to whatever happens here, whatever laws are put in place, and he should be able to be represented in our government because he contributes to life here and he was working, and because he contributes, he should be able to be represented.
And is there anything specific in the Constitution itself or in how it's been interpreted that does support that idea that the Constitution and its protections apply not just to citizens, but to other people here as well?
Sorry, can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, just wondering if there's anything in the Constitution itself that also supports that idea.
Well, Article 14 of the Constitution says that all people who live in the United States and are citizens of the United States have the right to, be represented within their government, and they have the privileges and immunities because they are citizens of the United States and living here. And giving to the government, like through taxes and work, you should be represented yourself through being able to vote.
I would like to ask you if you think that hunger is a global challenge that the world is facing, because quite frankly, I contribute to an international organization that attempts to address that. And so it's one of the things I think about. And I'm just curious as to what your thoughts about, global hunger versus climate change as a global challenge. Any ideas, thoughts?
I definitely agree that hunger is a world issue. And I think that having basic necessities is important to people being able to maintain and achieve happiness. Aristotle's theory of eudaimonia says that everyone has a purpose, and so the purpose of people is to be able to achieve happiness, and so the purpose of governments around the world is to provide the means for people to achieve happiness. And I think one of those ways is setting up social programs so that people have the ability to have basic necessities like food and water, because they are things that help people thrive in life and not just survive.
Thank you.
The pandemic has given us a lot of examples of that tension you talked about between individuals and their government. And I'm just curious, do you think anything that the government has done, either your state government or the federal government, throughout the pandemic has gone too far in infringing on individual freedoms? And if so, what is that and why? Or if not, why is it appropriate?
I don't believe they've gone past their limits. I believe they've done everything they can to help. I believe that they have had to sacrifice the individual freedoms for the common good, and they had the right to do so. I believe it's very important, especially now in a pandemic. I believe they're doing the best they can for respectively, yeah.
And we even see this with the state government in Massachusetts, when vaccine rollout in the very beginning of when vaccines were coming out was very slow and ineffective. The people pushed our state government to get them to meet and figure out how they can make it better and make vaccines more easily accessible to the people. And so us pushing our state legislators to get together and can I finish?
And that's time. Thank you. Sorry, I hate to cut off, but that's part of my role.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. First of all, amazing job. We are going to give you all some feedback now. I was so impressed by, first of all, I didn't have trouble hearing you just from like a sound perspective. That's always great. Sometimes people talk so fast, you have no idea what they're saying. And you also very clearly, stated a position and then used the citations, whether they were from Aristotle or case law or articles of the Constitution. You used those examples as supporting evidence for an argument that you were making. That skill alone is going to help you do so well in college and in many different types of workplaces. So keep up that good work. And, I would have liked to see a little bit more of a equally shared, responsibility for answering our questions during the question and answer period. That is really, really important. And I can only imagine how nerve-wracking it can be to go through this. But, if you're noticing that you have answered a lot, it can be good to try to take a step back. And similarly, if you realize that you haven't been talking as much as your peers, it's a good idea to try to make sure to assert yourself a little bit more to get that group participation in. So again, I'm really impressed by how well you all did. And I loved that you talked about your state government. And as a state government professional, this is something that I'm really passionate about. People have so much power in state and local government. So keep up that good work. Thank you so much.
I enjoyed your testimony, both the 4-minute presentation and your answers to our cross-examination questions. It was clearly thoughtful, and I did enjoy the references to court cases and to philosophers, and that shows me that you have a good understanding of the evidence to back up your particular positions. As feedback for improvement, I believe the global challenges question, part of the question now and in the future, is equal. It's an equal question to the domestic challenges today and in the future. And so I probably would have liked to listen to a little more discussion regarding the global challenges, but we have lots and lots of challenges. And quite frankly, America's role in the world has been, in the last 4 months, drastically different than what it was in the previous 4 years. And I think we're still all kind of feeling our way in that. And so I tend to believe that the reason this question talks about domestic challenges and global challenges is that very background of America finding out its role. One thing I do know for sure is that America's role will be defined by young, smart, bright people like you. And for that, I'm very pleased. Good job.
Yeah, and y'all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
Have a great morning.